record. All right, now I'm going to share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, you guys see Canvas up here? So project 3, week 2. Isn't that a really slick model? Wow, interesting. Anyway, so some of the best architecture schools in the universe are doing this kind of research right now. Like, how do you remake the built environment, thinking in terms of aggregation? Here's some examples from the Bartlett School of Architecture in London. So really quickly today, what we're going to do is I'll just quickly generate an aggregation for you guys one more time. Emphasis on keeping that initial ingredient, that building block, right? That thing that you reference in, simple. It can't be too complex, because you go from one of those to like 5,000 of those really quickly. And then suddenly your file size and the amount of computation it takes to remember everything, and then to crunch everything, and then to continually try to display it on your screen takes a lot of system resources. So you keep things simple, right? It's the aggregation of a simple component over and over and over again that builds complexity. Don't start with something very complicated. Don't start with something that has more than probably 10 surfaces joined together as a polysurface. Anything past that, you're going to encounter a world of pain when it comes time to try to do a make 2D of these things and to render them. It's going to take a long time. But that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll make an aggregation. I'll do the make 2D. We'll do the basic soft shadow rendering. We'll composite in Illustrator really quickly. Talk a bit about the parameters there around that. As you can see here, one of the things, this is an Axon drawing from a school. A similar exercise, right? And so you can see this sort of, in this case, the sort of nominal built environment, these sort of, rectilinear things. These are all boxes and rectilinears and planes too, but it's an aggregation, right? You can see that what they're proposing, that's actually shaded or toned in a different color value, right? So in this case, they've actually added brown and tan, some sort of warm coloration to these. In fact, it looks like they even added just a little bit of texture, which we can do. I can show you that using an overlay in Photoshop, okay? And that's, I think, really important. When you render these things out, you're gonna give them a little bit of color and just leave the rest of the context white. That might be the ground, that might be existing buildings. Let's say if you wanted to go that direction or not. Again, I'll just refer back to for your reference. Where's the modules? Why am I not seeing module? Like, why can't I just pare this down to have modules at the top? I don't understand why this has to be so complicated. Okay, here we go. So again, I highly recommend sort of differentiating your components, right? Your system here from any sort of existing built environment, right? You look at my example that I posted somewhere. Must be in week 1 here. Sorry. Yeah, here we go. No, I take that back. That's weird. Sorry, I wasn't trying to go off the form here. PDF example. Sorry, it was right there. Sorry, my bad. I'm just back here in the modules. I'll let that load. In the meantime, I just noticed that I didn't post this page under this module here. Just need to do that really quickly. There. So that should be, oh, it's not published. Well, that's cute. Publish. Yeah, that would help. All right, now you guys have access to that, this week's Canvas page. Not sure why this is taking so long, to be honest. I have it somewhere here on my computer locally. But the idea is that, again, you want to make sure that you keep these things and make them on different layers. Okay, so that's always the rule. I'm not going to wait for that to pop up forever. So I'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Grasshopper. And what I want to do is I'll quickly generate a system. I'll play around with a few of the parameters in order to generate 2 different systems. And then I'll bake some things into Rhino, and then I'll get going with making an Axon and doing the make 2D and stuff. What's going on here? Come on. What's going on with my computer? That's weird. This shouldn't take long to download. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
And there's 4 people in my household all trying to stream video right now for work and school. And so it's just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. What's going on with Windows? This is not a time for Windows to screw with me today. Come on, Windows. What in the world? My fan's kicked into hyperdrive here. That guy looks really pleased with himself. I don't blame him. That model is pretty tight, don't you think? All right. I'm not sure what's going on here. Yeah, right. So I'm about this far away from just like, Control Alt Delete Windows. All right, fine. You make me go nuclear here. Quit. Just quit Parallels midstream. Take that, virtual Windows machine. That model 3D printed, laser cut, 3D printed, I'm not sure. Oh, what in the world? Sorry, guys, I don't understand why this is suddenly, Windows always works fine for me. I'm gonna force quit Parallels. And then we'll see what kind of weird, strange ridiculousness that gives me when I try to restart Windows here, but all right. Take 2. I'm not sure what happened there, but oh, it says it was suspended, resuming. Oh, don't take your time here, Windows. What in the world? Okay. What in the world is this stuff? Come on. Sorry. I'll just go with new, and I'll go with large objects feet. Again, remember, if feet aren't your default, you can go to Tools, Options, and go to Units, right? Change it to feet here. I'll just start a new file. Now I'll try to open up Grasshopper, and hopefully nothing weird happens here. I mean, that was a nice thing. Over the years, you just, like back in the good old days, we had to use Maya and Studio Tools, which seems so heavy, and Rhino seems so light. Now Rhino's gotten kind of bloated. It's kind of weird. It doesn't feel so light anymore. Responsive. So another thing I'm going to do is turn off the stupid grid. I hate this grid. I really wish I could just default, not have it on. Go away, grid. There you are. I love grids. That one, not so much. All right, so I'm going to open up the document that we talked about the other day. Maybe. There we go. Downloads? No, wrong downloads folder. That's the Windows downloads folder. I'm going to go to the Mac downloads folder. And it's really confusing when you have 2 operating systems going at once. Where is it? How do I not have this? It should be like a recent file. That's what I'm. Sorry. Blah. There we are. This is the file you guys have. Just want to make sure I have the right one here. So a couple things, right? One is that, when you guys were given this file, the X dimension, you had 50 division or 50 cells, and Y dimension, you had 43 cells. So one of the things I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to select this grid that's created down here in the bottom left. I'm going to bake that into Rhino. I'll bake that into default. Why not? All right. I'm going to go ahead and close Grasshopper for the time being and just look at this grid. Let's see. Where is Canvas? Still thinking about trying to load a Google Drive PDF. I'm not sure what's going on with Google these days. It's kind of weird. It's kind of been slow on me. Gmail just has been acting weird. But regardless, if I go back to sorry. Go back to the page from last week, 3.1. Just gotta wait for this to load. Right, the thing we talked about on Wednesday was just creating, sort of couple of urban blocks, based on these dimensions, right? And so the long dimension is 450 feet, and the short dimension is like 387 or whatever that is. It's just 43 times 9 or whatever that was that we started out with. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create blocks that are 210 by 109 with 30-foot streets going in a 2x3 grid. And so 210, 109. I'll just try to remember those really quickly. Draw a polyline. I'm just going to start to snap here. Oh, sorry, polyline. There we go. Oh, damn, I've already forgotten. 210, 109. 210 and 109. Turn on my ortho. 210. Oops. 109. Sound effects, of course, are optional. Depends on the mood you're in. 210. I'll close that up. I'm actually going to put this on layer 1. I should have been a little more careful there. Put that on layer 1. That way it turns to red. Okay. We can keep this right here. And basically, I'm just going to make a copy of this. I don't need to do this more than once. Just copy it over here and snap it to this corner. What's going on here? Copy this from here to here. Oh, I hit scale. Oh, that's weird. Okay, yeah, that would not be good. I don't want to scale it. Just want to make a copy of it. Come on. All right, there we are. Ay, ay, ay. Adventures in rhinoing today. Just basic things seem to. All right, I'm just gonna, and then let's see, there's 109. So I'll go ahead and copy these down. Since I know the street widths are 30, I'll copy these down 139 feet. Yeah, there we are. Ta-da! There's our city blocks. Now, really important, okay? I'm going to go ahead and extrude these. I'll extrude them 6 inches, okay? I want to make sure that they're turned to solid, yes. And that way they'll be nice solid blocks. 0.5 feet, right? That's 6 inches. Boom, all right. I'm just going to turn this to shaded so you can see that there are surfaces there and not just a wireframe. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in this case, I'll just draw a rectangle. I'm just going to make sure I snap to the right corners here. Just going to draw a rectangle. I'm basically going to do another extrude here in just a moment. Oh yeah, look at that, right there. Okay. Okay. So you guys can see, I have this line. I'm going to extrude that one as well. Extrude, yeah. And I'm going to say solid, yes. And I'm just going to bring this down. What I want is I want to make it look like I've cut through the ground and the ground has a little bit of thickness, right? So I've like extracted like a chunk of the earth, essentially, right? So I don't want the ground to be flat. I want it to be thick. Those measurements are right here. We talked about them on Wednesday. So they're right here in this diagram, 210 by 109, right? For whatever reason, the lines aren't showing up so well, probably because they're light gray. Oh, I messed that up, but whatever. Okay, so 210-foot blocks in this direction with a 30-foot street, and then 2 30-foot streets in this direction, 109 blocks, 109-foot blocks. Okay. All right, back to Grasshopper. Now we can build something on top of this city. Yeah, yay. Woot, woot. I'm very pleased with that. So I'm also easily amused. But first things first, I'm going to wind this time slider down to 0, right? I just want to sort of see what I have plugged in here as far as points go. In this case, if this is the exact file I gave you guys the other day, then what I've done is I've randomly populated the cells, and then I use that random population of sort of points in these cells as the starting seed, right? But what you need to do is actually create your own sort of starting point, create points in here, reference them in with this widget, and then you can plug them right into right here, right? So you can just bypass all this random stuff and take care of it right there. Now, one thing I can do is turn off all this bake stuff in Rhino really quickly, and that'll help me see this stuff a little better. I'm going to go ahead and create, first of all, I'm going to turn off the preview for these random points. They're getting in the way. They become very confusing. There we are. Okay. And so now I can go through and I can create my own points. La, 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 la. Remember, too many points, too much density will lead to a mass extinction event, right? Due to overpopulation. So this guy right here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 live neighbors. It's going to be, it's a dead on arrival, right? So, but, key thing here, I think, is to, add enough density here in some places to try to just encourage some life to, in some cases, spring out of nowhere in successive generations. Let's just you can always see what a long line of these things do. Because each one will have a neighbor or 2 neighbors, so it should stay, but then it probably finds some sort of homeostasis. You can also always try to design something that will actually start to travel across the board, in which case it'll start to interact with some of the things that were stable and then render them unstable. Kind of an interesting sort of, yeah, it's interesting to talk about design over time, right? Because it's something that we typically don't do. We try to make everything static, and we design everything all at once, and then we draw it all really nicely so that people can understand what the heck we're talking about, and then we give it to someone and say, please build this, and don't charge too much to build it. Right? That's architecture in a nutshell, if you want to get just brutally honest. So, set multiple points. I'll just go ahead and try to select these. There we are. Let's see what happens. I can always just sort of test things by going a couple populations upwards, right? You say, okay, a couple of these fizzled and died. These are relatively stable and really predictable. They just sort of alternate back and forth. Those rows of 3 or columns of 3, they just sort of flash between a row and a column back and forth. Some of these start to grow outwards, which is pretty interesting. And some get thick and then thin again. All right. So I'm just going to quickly populate some more points here so that I can bake some things out. In the meantime, if you have a question, shout. Okay. I'm just going to make a copy of these points. I'll turn off my ortho. It's so cheaty. I'd like to do this. Oh boy.
Hey Josh.
Yeah.
Question. If we ran
I can barely hear you.
You can barely hear me?
Yeah.
How about now?
Okay, shoot. What's up?
So if you ran like another version in parallel with it and you could intermingle like a different shape, would that be something like if we had that grid of points and we had another grid of points to like if we just copied the whole recipe and then shifted it down and added another set of points.
And did it second one? You could have 2 different things if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have twice as much information.
Yeah, I was just wondering if.
So that's the trade-off.
Done that, if you've ever experienced.
I mean, if computational prowess isn't like an issue, then go for it if you like. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Just see if you like it or not. I mean, that's the other thing. You got to be your own sort of your own sort of critical eye with these things. I would say, in order to sort of look at what you have and ask yourself if you like it or not, if it's interesting or not. So I'm gonna, at this point, turn the block information back on. You know, I'm gonna change this layer 1 that's red, which also conflicts with the sort of red points. So I'm gonna change that layer color to something a little different here. So it's contrasty enough. All right, so I have some stuff there. You know, the other thing is I probably don't want to populate streets. Duh, Josh, come on. You should know better than that. I'll go ahead and turn this back down to 0, and I'll just move some things out of the streets here. Come on, Josh. Let's go. Bush League. There we go. All right. I'll just take these and I'll move them over here. That'll certainly solve the problem. Now I'll take these and I'll just move these out of the way. Come on now, get out of there. You shouldn't be there. You have no business being in the street. All right, one more time here. Just move those over there. Why not? Bring some closer to the edge. I think I've cleared out the streets. I should have been a little more careful. All right, now I got to see what I have. Where are you, Grasshopper? There you are. And we'll just build this thing up. Yeah, it's okay. It's not the best. I think you guys will have some better things than this. But I'm at this point, I'm just going to quickly do a couple of things, right? You can do this in any order. I'm just going to try to determine my Axon view. I'm getting really tired of seeing this in perspective. So again, if I go to the perspective viewport window and right-click, right, I can go to set view. I can change this to anything: top, bottom, left, right, front, back, perspective, two-point perspective. Two-point perspective is kind of fun. Isometric. I can pick northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, as you can imagine. I'm just going to try to pick the best looking. That one's not so bad, maybe. Maybe make this grow a little more. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. We'll see what happens with that. I might have to add some more points. Some of these really fizzle and die pretty quickly. Okay, another thing I'm going to do, right, is I need to determine my basic ingredient, right? And so, you know, you could do this with a simple box. I recommend making it just a little more interesting than a box, but, you know, don't go overboard. You know, for instance, let's say, let me think about this for just a sec. I'll make a block. I'll start off with a block: 0, 0, 0, and then 9, 9, 0, and then a height of 9. I just made a silly little block over here. But I can just quickly, let me just make a copy of this 2 times, let's say. Why not? Turn on my ortho. There we are. I'll make a copy over here. Maybe I'll move these down. Make a little T shape or something. Where are we? Oh, it's right here. Never mind. There it is. I'm just going into the side view and moving these down a bit. All right, and let's just do some Boolean subtract in this case. Subtract from this, subtract with these. There we go. I'll just use that. It's simple. I screwed up my parallel view, didn't I? I'll go back to that in a minute. It's not a 30-30 axon, so I'll need to fix that again. But at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reference this in. I'm going to save everything, of course. That always helps. Save. I'll call this, let's go to desktop, and I'll call this trash mic delete me. There we go. All right. Later on, I'll look at that 6 months from now and go, what the heck is this? And I go, it doesn't even matter. I can delete it because it says so in the file name. All right, so set 1 brep. Go ahead and bring that in. And then prepare for, like, your mind to be blown. Might take a few minutes. Maybe. Hopefully. See what's going on here. Looks like I probably have a Revit update to Download. All right. So is it working? Not quite yet. What's going on with my computer today? Not a good day for computing in the Vermilion household. I have a fifth grader taking maps test, and we had some connection issues, which is a pretty lousy day to have connection issues. There we go. All right. Just took a little while. There's a happy little aggregation. Yeah, not so bad. That's a lot of T's. You know, I pity the fool. I mean, this is like Mr. T. You go crazy with this. You guys know who Mr. T was? Way back in the day? No, anyway. All right, so a couple of things here. Yeah, let's see. Interesting. All right. Let's say I really like this. I'm not sold on it completely, but you know, for the sake of argument, and the fact that we just need to move on to quickly utilize our time better, I'm going to say I really like this. Yeah, you know, it is what it is. And so now I need to bake things out, right? Okay, so let's take a look at our layers. Again, step away for a little while. Look at your layers occasionally when you need to. What did we put on this layer? We put the original grid. Okay, so here's the sort of grid. Here's our urban context. Urban context / ground. Purple is our unit ingredient. And blue, I guess, will be our baked aggregation. Baked. All right. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to select this widget, in this case, bake it on the baked layer. And I'll wait for that to be responsive once more. Okay. I can close out Grasshopper. All right, couple of things here. It's going to take a while to do a make 2D of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick rendering. I might have to change my cereal box, man. Yeah, so I might have to change the size of my window just to keep the time from slipping by too fast or too slowly. In this case, just for the demonstration here in class. Same with the make 2D. We'll see how this works. If memory and the way this is still reacting it is any indication, maybe I have a ways to go. What I'm going to do, I just saved the file, so I'm going to say get info. Let's see. Yeah, so this is already up to 252 megabytes. If you go over 500 megabytes in your Rhino file, then you need to edit out. You need to edit down, okay? Let's see. Oh, no, don't do that. Why did it? Sorry, just undo my view change here. I'm just trying to like move it over here. And you think that would be easy, but apparently it's not. So really quickly, I'm going to go to some render settings. In this case, I'm just going to, I'll just go to low, I'll try draft quality, why not? 72 DPI. I'm going to shrink this down a bit. Here, there you go. Let it resize. And just because I don't want to take all of your time today, just like you watching my screen try to render, that would be tragic. I'll go with the transparent background. Sure, why not? Ground plane off, I don't need that. I have my own ground. Thank you very much. Skylight, that's good. Okay, so my render settings look fine. These are the typical default ones that I usually like to do when I just want some soft shadow, white clay generic renderings. I like to fight these battles in Photoshop after the fact when it comes to adding some materials and colors and textures and things like that. And on Wednesday, we'll do that. We'll render a perspective. I'll render a perspective out ahead of time. And then we'll bring that into Photoshop and we'll talk about how to frame your perspective, and then we'll do some Photoshop magic there on Wednesday. That's the name of the game. Doing the perspective on Wednesday. For these two axons that you need to do, you know, an axon of two different sort of scenarios, right? So two axons. They should be, you know, the same size. They should be the same format. So we'll just do one for the day just to go through that and remind you of that process. Let's see. So I have that. By default, I think everything's just going to be like a sort of white generic like sort of plaster with minimal gloss, no reflection or refraction. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a second material. Just, you know, I'm going to create my own material. I'm going to go to the materials palette for the shaders and hit plus, and I'll go to plaster. So again, when you're thinking about rendering, you know, it's always about, okay, the camera and its set up, you know, the settings it has, like, you know, the lens length, how much you see, you know, and then what kind of projection you're doing. Is it parallel projection, like an elevation or a plan or an axon, or is it a perspectival projection, you know, like an eye level perspective or an aerial perspective, bird's eye perspective, etc. But you also need to think about lighting, right? And that's what we were just adjusting with those render settings, just making sure that we turned direct sun off, that we had a sort of cloudy, overcast, like today in Las Vegas Valley, an overcast day, where you just have a bunch of diffuse light. So you don't have a bunch of hard, crisp shadows if you look outside right now. But you do have soft shadows, so you have that going. And then we also need to look at the other thing, right? Our eyes are cameras, and they see light, right? And light bounces off objects. So we have our geometry, we have our lighting settings, we have the camera set up because we have it set to Axon. The last thing we need to do is give it the properties, material properties, color properties. So we tell it like how light reflects off of the geometry and how it appears back into our eyes, right? So it's always those four things that we're looking at, right? Materials, lighting, the geometry, and then the camera itself, right? To sort of make sure everything's pitch perfect. All right, so I'm just going to go, oh, I hit plastic in accident, which is, of course, why not? Of course I did. I'm just going to hit plaster instead. There we are, plaster. By default, it's like there's hardly any settings here to screw around with. I'm just going to change the color, and I'll just go to color picker. And here you can pick whatever color you fancy. Honestly, I don't really have a horse in this race. What kind of day is it today? It's like a salmon day. I don't know. That's really kind of, we'll see what this looks like. I'm not holding my breath. All right, so now we have that shader. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on the baked layer and say select all those objects, right, that I baked in. Right, I'm going to leave the default, the grounds, and all that stuff, the city blocks that I modeled. Right, I'm going to leave that as the default white plaster material that it gives it anyway. I'm just going to select the stuff that I baked out. I'm going to select this and say assign to objects. And so it's going to assign it to the objects that are selected. All right, hopefully. Now I'm going to go back to render settings, just double check this. 72. If you can get this up higher, of course you want to do that. I'm just going to leave it at draft quality instead of good quality. So this might look kind of gross, but we'll see. Transparent background. I turn the ground plane off. Skylight on, sun off. I don't want to render any curves or edges or anything like that. I'll go ahead and hit render. Now about this, while this is going, I am just going to mention that render curves and render ISO curves. There is an option for you if Make2D is crashing your computer because you have so many objects. One thing you could always do is try to render this with those curves, the ISO curves and the edge curves on. And that could be one way to get some of those edges in there that we would normally create using the Make2D. And then we would superimpose over this. So I'll show you, this isn't taking too long at all. That's good. I wouldn't think so, but the way my computer's been acting today, I take no chances, take nothing for granted. All right, and so you can see very quickly, you know, I have some city blocks, I have, you know, the ground, I have, you know, I forgot to actually delete this little stray thing right here, the original, oopsie. I should probably put that on its own layer and turn that layer off so it's not there showing up as light gray. All right, so this is a rendering. You can save that as a PNG, which I'll do anytime now. Completed, yeah, okay, great. Just double check and make sure if you want that transparent background that you do set this to PNG. I'll just turn this to the desktop. I'll call this Delete Me McJunkie. All right, there we are. One last thing I'm gonna do before I do the Make2D. Sometimes the Make2D takes a long time. So just about this, what I can do is I can say render curves, and I can render surface edges and ISO curves, right? I think that's really interesting. One of the things I'm going to do is, I don't know if you guys remember this, but the make 2D stuff, when you have things that overlap, they don't necessarily draw those edges where the two surfaces overlap, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to right click in the baked layer, and I'm gonna select all these objects again, and I'm gonna use the intersect command. Intersect. Now it's gonna find all of the intersections between all of these blocks that I made, and it's gonna draw curves at each of those intersections, okay? In which case we'll start to get all those edges drawn, okay? So what that means is that I'll start to actually see those edges drawn where I have two surfaces intersecting each other, right? That edge of intersection, sometimes I have to tell a Rhino to generate those as curves ahead of time. So let's just see what happens here. There's one thing else I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and turn the ISO curves off for all of these blocks. And I just got to wait for this to finish. It's got a lot of intersections. 6,784 poly surfaces. Each of those poly surfaces, if you think about a T, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so I went right up to the 12 sort of face, 12 surfaces joined into a poly surface sort of limit that I would suggest. So you multiply that 6,784 by 12, and that's how many surfaces I have that it has to sort of go through and figure out. So this takes a while. So again, budget your time wisely. Really quickly while that's going, I'm just gonna go back to the modules. I'm gonna try to pull up this, maybe my my connection's working a little better this time. Just gonna pull up the PDF example that's posted here. Try to. Don't understand why this is taking so long. Here, I could just download it quicker than that. Come on. It's only 43 megabytes. Why was it taking so long? Yeesh. Right? And so, for instance, you can see here, right? Making sure that you have that ground sort of shown, right? We'll talk about perspective on Wednesday, okay? Let's see here. One of the things I was just going to mention, and I'll zoom in on this one really quickly, maybe. Not sure why it's using Chrome to try to, but you can see that there's a number of edges here where they intersect, and so I had to literally do this intersect tool in order to get those drawn. Still going, right? So you can see that it's a little bit of an uphill battle. The render only took 1 minute and 12 seconds. This intersect tool is going to take a little longer, unfortunately. Oh, this is where you sit back. It still looks like I might have missed a few in here. There's a couple places, or I have a few stray curves when I did the make 2D. Maybe I just didn't get things to line up quite nicely enough. Sometimes I get in a hurry. Right. All right, so. I wonder how long this is seriously going to take. Oh boy. All right, so while this is going, are there any questions thus far? I mean, is this making sense? I mean, I'm guessing this is a lot of the stuff you've done like in the spring of second year studio / we've done some of this stuff before in 367. So when it comes to putting the renderings together and the make 2D, you know, that's pretty much just a review of what we've done in the past. File management, layer management, super important. I always joke around about, file names, right? You know, and I start to get things like trash McDelete me or I am dead inside.3dm or, golly, it's Wednesday, I want to die.ai or something like that, right? But name those things very carefully. Name them consistently so that you actually remember. Yes, exactly. Remember what they actually are. A week later, you're like, which one is this that I have to open up? Which one's the latest version? right? You get like final, you get like final 02, final, you get up to like final 12, then final on Friday, and then final, you know, gibberish, and then, you know, a couple of F-bombs in the file names and things like that. So again, just try to get in the habit of naming these things in a nice way so that you actually remember what they are later on, all right? This is spinning blue wheel of death. The question is, how long will it take it to respond if I actually hit escape to try to cancel what it's done so far? Or have I hit the point of no return where, you know, 10 seconds from now, it'll just be done? Oh, look at that. It just finished up on its own. Yay. I love it when a plan comes together. All right, cell curves. So I'm going to select all the curves. You can see there's quite a few curves there. All right. I accidentally changed my view. I don't want to do that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and render this one more time. And like I said, rendering with these settings, with the render curves on, that's like a last resort. But if the make 2D is proving to be taking too long, or your computer comes back, Windows has a tendency of saying, we're out of virtual memory. Therefore, we will close everything down. That means you need to reboot your system, not have anything else on, and try again. Okay. Again, the idea here is that between the ingredient that you use, right, making sure that it's simple and not too complex, and then the number of ticks, you know, the number of generations you make on that slider, right, to grow taller or shorter, right, you can find that sweet spot between making it not too simple, but at the same time making it doable so that you can actually produce the drawings of it. Does that make sense? So you might have to go back and forth a few times in order to find that sweet spot, depending on the complexity of the stuff. One last thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to zoom in. You can see that with these, you see all these little crosses, like all the lines inside of the surfaces, those isoparms. What I'm going to do, I'll go back to my original view because I want to make sure I keep the same vantage point each time here. Let me go back to the layers. I'm just going to select all of these objects one more time. Go to the properties box, and it says show surface isocurve. I'm going to check that off. So I'm going to turn off the isocurves. Oh yeah, look at that. Right, so now it's going to look like this, right? No isocurves, no isoparametric curves. All right, and now I can go to render and I can say render curves and render surface edges and isocurves. I don't have any isocurves, but I want the edges, and I want all those curves that I did the make 2D of. I can hit render once more. All right, sometimes I do this anyway just for fun. Oh, you figured it out. That's good to hear, Ali. That's great. That's great news. Yay! All right, that makes me happy. I'm glad that's working for you now. So what it'll do is it'll go ahead and render this one more time, and then you'll see it sort of finish the rendering, then it'll overlay the line work on top, and you can save it again as a PNG. Those lines that it lays on top will not be editable. They'll just be they'll just be pixels. You'll save this as a PNG, so you can't adjust line weights and things like that you would want to, but this is the sort of alternate way if make 2D proves too difficult and starts crashing your machine. You don't want to crash your machine a bunch. Sometimes bad things happen to critical system files if your machine keeps crashing. Right? So at this point, I just pop in a piece of gum and just watch. So it's still rendering, of course. I don't know, faded salmon is not such a great color. It kind of looks a little too, like, I don't know, kind of fleshy, bloody. I don't know, kind of gross to me. You guys can use whatever you want, I don't care. It's very monstrous. There you go. You're welcome. Anytime now, it'll be done. I can't wait. All right, let's see.
Gosh, for the rendering color, like we can choose any color we want.
Ah, look at that. I forgot to change the lines to black, and they're blue now. Great. I'm sorry, what was the question, Maria?
Can we use any color we want for the shape? Like
Sure.
you did for the rendering?
Yep. Yeah, you
Okay.
can. I mean, you'll get extra credit if you guys figure out what my favorite color is. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you can pick your color. So I'll save this anyway, just because, of course. I'll save this to desktop. What am I going to call this? Example with curves rendered or something like that. See, that's where I would, now I can tell what that actually is. One more time here, just because I'm a glutton for punishment, I'm going to make 2D of this. I'll try to make 2D. Go ahead and select all of this stuff at once. Oh, I'm going to hit escape. What I do, I dragged my cursor down the bottom and accidentally moved my view a little bit. It's really important that I never do that while I'm trying to make a set of drawings and the composite over each other, like a rendering and a make 2D hidden line drawing. So select object to draw. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to pop up with a box. I'm going to try scene silhouette. Why not? Viewport rectangle. I'm going to leave everything else off. There's going to be so many lines here, and it's going to be a lot of stuff to do. Do not turn on hidden lines. That'll just be a disaster, unless you want to want this to take 18 times longer. So I'm going to hit OK. Again, this might prove to be disastrous depending on the time that it takes to generate this. All right. So, any questions? Any further questions? And while I wait for those, I'm going to go ahead and pop this up in actual Acrobat. And let's take a look at this example. Oh, I stopped sharing. Come on. Can you guys see my screen again? Hopefully.
Yep, you're good.
All right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but January 12th, 2020 was like a long time ago, right? What in the world? Yeah, anyway. I'll move to this one. Right, one thing you'll see is that I changed that scene silhouette, and I did actually beef that up just a little bigger, like as far as line weight goes, compared to all the rest of the shown lines. Okay. Let's see how else this is working. This is still going. I'm gonna go ahead and go to Photoshop, and let's try a little bit of overlay layer, okay? I just want to address this really quickly. I guess I haven't switched the icons on my dock from 2021 or 2020 to 2021. So I guess I'll open up Photoshop 2020. Maybe. Here it is. All right, so let me just open this sometime today. I'm so impatient. It's funny, isn't it? All right, so I'll go ahead and just, I'll open up this first PNG that we rendered out. So in Photoshop, I can always come in here. One thing I could always do, this is kind of a really small file. One of the things I can do is I could use this magic wand tool to try to select certain things. I can turn the tolerance up. Turn the tolerance up to 45 maybe. I could always try to, yeah, that's an adding mode here. Tolerance, I'll go up higher. Can't remember if high tolerance is less picky or more picky. Seems to be less picky. That's a good thing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to select all the salmon stuff. Oh, maybe it's not picky enough. I'm starting to get some grays. That's weird. Sorry, the whole point here is that I just wanted to quickly, let me turn that back down to, I'll try 50. So what it does, it looks at adjacent pixels, and if they're close enough to the pixel that you clicked, then it'll select those pixels as well. So you can go ahead and start to iteratively try to select most of this stuff, right? Or you could just re-render just these without the actual ground. But one of the things I would mention here, I'll just try to quickly get some of this stuff out. Yeah, this seems to be working. Let me just try to get a good significant portion of this blob, is you can add, you know, let's say a concrete texture, or let's see, or otherwise here in Photoshop quite easily using overlay layers. And so really one of the reasons I'm doing this, and I'll just quickly see if I can get the rest of this stuff sort of selected in here. It's hard to see what I'm doing. This takes, again, more time than I have to sort of waste in front of you, unfortunately. Let me just try to get more of this. So I'm not sure if how much of this I've actually selected. What I'm going to do, if let's say I had all of this salmon stuff selected, I can go to paths and I can say, make work path from selection. All right. And then one of the other things I can do, right? So I went to paths and they can see, like here's layers, channels, and paths. Now I have a path. I can go to, let's see, maybe I might have some sort of, if I go to downloads, I might have some sort of texture here anyway. When I had to teach Photoshop to the grad students, and over the summer, we did some stuff. Let's see here. See if I can quickly find something good to use here. Textures. Could there be more stuff in my downloads folder? Yikes. At this point, maybe it's just quicker if I get on my browser and download some stuff, right? But which I'll do. Why not? I'll even try to spell things correctly. Concrete textures. All right, here we go. So I'll go to Google Images. I'll go to settings. No, sorry. Tools. There we go. Tools should bring down. No, maybe it's settings. No, I don't think so. Why isn't it bringing down the tools? We can basically tell it to only go with large stuff. I'm not sure why tools is not working. There. Like, so just large only. Let's say I find a good texture here. Why not? I'll go with this one. Sure. Open image, a new tab. Let's see how big this really is. That works. I'll just save this to downloads. Open. Where's downloads? There we are. Select all, copy. I'll paste this in on a new layer. Yes, yes, there we are. I'll make sure that it's covering all of that. And I'm going to now go to File. And what do I do here? I need to load that path, work path, as a selection. Let's see. Is it select? Select. Edit. Where is it? Darn. Load selection, save selection. Oh, sorry. Here. Load path as selection. So I go back to this work path, and I can say load it as a selection. Go back to layers. Right now I've selected. I have that as a selection. I can go select inverse and delete everything that isn't part of. Oh, sorry. Make sure that layer is selected. There we are. And then I can actually turn this layer to some sort of overlay layer, just to sort of add that texture to it, right? So you can do this with a lot of materials like wood and concrete. This is at a scale that I just want a little bit of the texture to make it look like a, let's see if I can find a good one here. Ugh, there's a lot of nasty maybe multiply. Multiply looks good. Yeah, I'll do multiply. So now you can see the difference. I'm zoomed in to 200%, so it's pixelated, but you can see that texture versus where you don't see that texture. So that's where I would actually be more careful about, using that stuff. Overlays are pretty helpful. And in fact, that's, I don't even bother with like trying to make maps for rendering anymore. I just Photoshop everything these days. We'll talk more about that on in the perspectives, because we'll actually add, we'll do a number of things so we can actually add these things in a nicer way, okay? Let's see, what else have I not covered yet? Oh, let's see where Rhino is. Hey, it finally finished the Make 2D. All right. Yay. It's about time. I mean, hooray. I'll move this over. From here, I want to save. All of these curves, again, add to the file size, right? So these files start to get pretty heavy. So again, don't go overboard with making too much trouble for yourself with the initial ingredient, initial unit. Export selected. I'll export this as an Illustrator file. I'll just put it on the desktop. Yay, okay. Okay. And I can do the same thing with this. I'll just really quickly save this. Sure, why not? As a PNG. I didn't really get the texture all over the thing, but whatever. You guys will be more careful if you choose that route. While that's happening, let's go ahead and get Illustrator fired up here. Okay. I'll move this off screen. I have window fatigue here. Too many windows on my screen. Where'd Illustrator go? Come on, Illustrator. Where are you? Oh, it's still starting up. Take a little longer, Illustrator. Come on. All right. Here we are. Yay. Open, and I will open up this Illustrator file I made on the desktop. Where's that? There it is. No. Yay. There it is. Quite literally, yay. And then, of course, in Illustrator, first thing I'm going to do is double check this artboard. What is this? 24 by 24. That seems a bit large. We'll go with 12 by 12 or 11 by 11. Let's go with 11 by 11. That fits on 11 by 17, doesn't it? 11 by 17s are a lot cheaper to print than 12 by 12s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to go to the height of 11. And in Y, I'll go to 0. I'll try that again. Oh, here we go. 0. Now let's move this over. Let's go to the middle. And let's tell it, let's see, what's the middle of 11? 5.5, right? 5.5. Just center this bad boy up-ish. Needs to be bumped over a little more. Let's go with 5.75. Move over 1/4 inch. Oh, come on, really? Okay, 6. Oh, that's perfect. All right, 0 and 6. Because of course, who wouldn't dream of that from up the head? So let's go ahead and place the PNG. Delete McJunkie. This height will go to 11. Right, from here, we're just matching things up. So 0 and 6. Let's put this on its own layer, shall we? Let's do that and move this layer down so it's underneath all the other layers. We'll go ahead and lock it. Couple of things here. Viewport rectangle, I can just turn that off. Visible curves. I don't like blue. I don't like that line weight. We'll go with black. I'm going to turn that stuff down to something much lighter, 0.25 maybe. Oh, that's the scene silhouette curves. Oh, okay. Oh, maybe I'll bump those up a little bit then to 0.75. The visible curves, I was like, something's not happening here. They're still blue. Okay, try to act a little smarter now. Select the right layer and turn these things down. 0.25 isn't small enough. I can always type in my own value. Bring those down. Oh, where did they go? That was too low. Let's try 0.25, see what that looks like. They get kind of lost, don't they? All right, so let's select them one more time, beef them up a little more. Let's go with 0.5. We'll go with the scene silhouette. We'll beef that up to 1. Why not? Again, always trying to make sure you have enough time to just sort of, what I call sort of audit the drawing, right? Like just go around and make sure that you haven't missed any. You know, sometimes that make 2D, that scene silhouette, and misses a couple of edges here, right? So sometimes I just go around and see if I can clean anything up before, because I'm anal like that. I'm just weird. Another thing that bugs me is having this edge go to the very end here. Yeah, just get rid of those. Because those were surface edges, so you see them. There we go. Now it looks like we've really cut a section to the ground, right? Oh, yeah. I think I selected the wrong one here. Just zoom in. There we are. Zoom in. Little things, right? Great drawings take time. Even if your digital tools are generating half of the stuff for you, that TLC that you give it afterwards is really the difference. I don't care what you're doing. There we are. All right, so there's an axon, right? You need 2 of these, right? You know, you could be experimenting with a different ingredient each time, or you could keep the same ingredient. You could be experimenting with a different seed configuration each time. Right? You could have this exact same thing. It just could be, it looks like 2 different models depending on which way you're looking at it. So you could just change the axon view each time. I wouldn't necessarily know, as long as I don't necessarily know, and I think that they're 2 different sort of schemes. I think it's okay. You might also experiment with color differently each time if you'd like. Okay, but this is it in a nutshell, right? Next time what we'll do, right, on Wednesday, our last day that we officially meet, don't forget during the review week or during study week, I will be online, but it's optional, right, for you to come if you just need some help. But I understand everybody has lots of studio stuff to do, deadlines that week, and reviews. So I'm going to go back to perspective, but just a sneak peek of what we're going to do on Wednesday. Right, we'll go into perspective. We'll change some of the settings here, viewport settings. 50 millimeter is too tight of a lens length. We'll go with something like 28, 35, 25, something like that. Make it wider angle. We'll get in here, and we'll start to frame some perspectival views. And then it'll be all about rendering. So maybe I need to make this a little wider angle just so I can see a little more. But I always like to have something in the foreground here, almost looking like it's coming out of the camera, and then some midground and some background. We'll actually have to add some background. I can do that. Actually, in Photoshop after the fact if I want to. Right? But this idea of the horizon sort of dropping off, that's something I'll have to figure out later. You can always move upwards too and just not see the ground. Some people might call that cheating. I call it being creative. All right, so not painting yourself in a corner with the decisions you make, right? Just always trying to think a few steps ahead. But then we'll actually do a lot more in Photoshop. The example that I have here in the thing, I mean, it looks pretty simple actually. So it's not really that complex of a perspective, but I'll just show you really quickly how many layers that turned into when I was just screwing around with it. Try to find a PSD here. I can find a PSD file here. List. Sometime today. Kind. Half my day is spent waiting on my laptop to do things for me. JPEGs, PNGs, Project 3. Where is Project 3? Hopefully it's in the desktop here. There we go. That makes much more sense. Again, just a sneak peek of, you know, let's see, what do we have here? Never mind, that's flattened. Oh, that's a JPEG, that's why. I thought I opened up the PSD. What in the world? Of course. Right, so it actually starts with, I think this. No, this. Then I did a solar flare. Then I added an overlay layer with a Gaussian blur to sort of soften it. I added some, this just is like weird black stuff just to edit out the background that you can see in the gaps here. I put in a sky. You know, I wasn't so happy with the softness, so I added yet another, Gaussian blur there. Added an overlay layer with some, you know, that's just basically, you know, using the brush and creating some color. And right, and so you can just sort of add some atmosphere, sort of an atmospheric thing. We can also add some overlay layers and things like that if you want to make it more gritty or actually add some materiality. Okay, but again, just as a reminder, I mean, that's what I might have closed out Canvas. That example from the Bartlett, that Axon, you know, that has some texture to it. That's exactly what they did. They just applied that in Photoshop after the fact. Okay, so it's all about just selecting the right things in here and then going from there. All right. In fact, I could do that right now, actually. Let's see this. Yeah, so if I see if this is big enough, copy, paste, it's not. I'll fudge it for now. I'll make this an overlay layer of some sort of type here. Multiply always seems to be the color burn's kind of interesting. Anyway, you know, that's one way to sort of just add some grit or texture or grain. In this case, it's a little over the top. I'm going to turn the opacity of the layer down. You just see a little bit of the specks from it, but not too many. Just where it's dark, it starts to disappear where it's lighter and brighter. Right? So on and on and on. Right? So we'll do more Photoshop on Wednesday. Any other quick questions before we call it a day? Anyone? Anyone? Can you unlock the project 2 submittal? Ah, yes. that gets to the one last announcement. And again, I'll keep repeating this each time we meet, or the next couple times. But several things, right? Some of you have not submitted everything. I'm willing to accept late work and try to give you as much credit as I can for it. You know, it's not fair to everybody who submitted on time to give you full credit, but I can give you credit for stuff that you missed the deadline or something, or just you had it but you didn't submit it or whatever, right? So I'm going to go through and start unlocking all of the assignments for late submittals in Canvas. So if you have a 0, you have a chance to actually submit something for partial credit, and I recommend you do that. The points start to add up. The points accumulate by the end. Okay. When it comes to the also, if you've submitted something and you haven't gotten a grade on it, go to Canvas and look at the comments. I'm probably asking you for something before I give you a grade. Okay. I did that with project 2. A few of you like showed me a picture photo of a model. Maybe it was the frame only. It didn't have like any of the components on there. You didn't even have a photo of like, here's the laser cut components, and they were complete disaster, right? Like, I can't give you partial credit for doing that part if you don't show me some sort of evidence of it. So, if you've submitted project 2, for instance, but you haven't gotten a grade for it yet in Canvas, look at your submission in Canvas. I've probably added a comment to you saying, look, do you have any photographs of X, Y, and Z, or can you add this false color map to your PDF? And I can give you, full credit for it or whatever, right? You just didn't follow the instructions. I'm asking you for one more step or one more thing that you didn't submit. And that'll have implications on how I grade it. So, all right. So 2 things, right? If you submitted something on time, but you haven't gotten a grade yet, go back and look at the comments and make sure that you clear things up with me, and let me know if you have any questions, or let me know if you resubmit, okay, or submit the extra stuff. In the meantime, if you just haven't submitted something and you need to make a late submittal for partial credit, I'm going to start opening all those up right after class. I'll go through Canvas and open up each assignment from here until the end of the semester to accept late work, okay? For the objects on this, is there an efficient shape? I tried a Boolean subtraction cube and it crashed my system. It's a number of faces. Don't get too complicated, okay? Start with something relatively simple, like I'm doing. I'm just like, a T. I could have just extruded a T, actually, right? Something with maybe a couple of, maybe more than a sort of cube faces, but not much more. Don't go over 12 faces, right? Because it's the sum total of all these things being stacked up that actually creates the complexity, right? So you don't have to start with something overly complicated. It's the repetition that actually creates the sort of genuine sort of architectural excitement and interest and complexity. Okay. What else? Anything else I'm missing? Any other questions? All right, so again, one more time, we'll meet Wednesday. We'll do the perspective stuff in class. The following week, once we come back from Thanksgiving, I'll be here for anybody that needs help. But the classes on Monday and Wednesday are optional. So the last 2 classes are optional. They're just help days. I'll be around if anybody needs anything at the very beginning of the class time. If nobody shows up, I'm not going to wait around for an hour and 15 minutes. I'll probably leave within 10 minutes. All right. So, okay. Well, then I'll see you guys soon. Yay. Oh, I have too many windows open. Yikes.